Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Patrick, and yeah. Today's video is going to be basically some things that I learned during my first year of college that I kind of wish I knew beforehand. I feel like I've seen a lot of these videos on YouTube, especially with it being like back to school season and stuff like that. But not for us quarter kids, because we don't go back for a whole nother month. But we'll get into that a little bit later in this video. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like, comment, all that good stuff. Turn on those post notifications to stay updated with every new video that I post. And let's get into it. So just a little background and some context before we get into the rest of the video. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Patrick. I'm going to be a second year biological sciences major at the University of California, Irvine. And like I mentioned, my entire first year of college was online, but I definitely was able to learn a bunch of things that I think are pretty useful, especially going into college and having to transition into in-person classes in the fall. So without further ado, let's get started. So let me be the first person, I think, to say that the quarter system is not as romanticized as everyone makes it seem. Let me just let that sink in for you. Awesome. If you don't know what the difference is between the quarter system and the semester system, the normal traditional semester system is what a lot of colleges in the United States follow, and it's basically 2 periods of 15 weeks of instruction. So there's 15 weeks in like the fall semester, and then there's another 15 weeks of instruction in the spring semester. But with the quarter system, we have 3 10-week periods. So normally semester system schools start in like mid to end of August. With the quarter system, we start classes at the end of September. And it's pretty weird just because a lot of your friends are following the semester system and they're going to school like a month before you. And then you're kind of just sitting there like, what am I supposed to do with the rest of my time?
What the hell we gonna do now?
But I'm doing summer sessions, so I'm pretty occupied with that as of right now, unfortunately. So the quarter system moves a lot faster than the regular semester system.
Why are we going so fucking fast?
You're learning the same amount of content, it's just broken up into 3 sections as opposed to like 2. For example, if there was like a 1A class and a 1B class, in the quarter system, it'd be like 1A, 1B, 1C. You would be learning the same amount of things. It's just broken up into 3 different chunks instead of the 2 chunks. When you're choosing between a college, it's definitely really important to weigh the options between the quarter system and the semester system to see what's gonna fit best for you. Going into college, a lot of people really romanticize the idea of the quarter system to me, and they were like, oh, if you have a class like you don't like, you only have to take it for 10 weeks. But on the contrary, you're having midterms like 2 weeks into instruction, so that's definitely like really fast paced. Also with the quarter system, there is no such thing as a syllabus, like a syllabus week or a syllabus day, like at least not from my experience being a bio major, but like the first day of classes, like at least for me, we had stuff due, and like, I don't know, the quarter system is definitely not as romanticized as a lot of people make it seem, but also like if you think about it, like with the semester system, you're having to remember 15 weeks of instruction for a final as opposed to like 10 weeks of content for your final, if that makes any sense. But I guess, yeah, that's definitely something you need to weigh the pros and cons between when deciding between a college, because I was definitely shocked transitioning from online senior year, which was basically busy work, to 10 weeks of instruction and like midterms like literally 2 weeks in, like what? Also, PSA, if you're gonna call it a midterm, put it in the middle of the term. So like 10-week term, 5 weeks, that's the midterm. Not week 2, week 4, week 6, week 8, and then a finals. Like, if you're gonna do that, call it a test because it's not a midterm. Alright, so another thing that I learned during my first year of college was that college is a lot more independent work. So basically what I mean by this is like when you're in high school, you have basically 8-hour days of school, and you kind of have just like a few hours of homework and studying outside of school. But at least with college, well, at least at UCI, there are 3 different kinds of like meeting classes. So you can either have a class that meets 3 times a week for 50 minutes, you can have a class that 2 times a week that meets for 1 hour and 20 minutes, or you can have a class once a week for like 3 hours and something minutes. I don't know, I've never done one of those because I do not have the patience to sit through a 3-hour lecture. Like, Yeah, so as opposed to high school, since you're in class for like 8 hours a day, in college you're only in class for maybe like 3 hours max a day maybe. During my first quarter, I didn't realize how much of like independent work you had to put outside of class. For example, I had like 50-minute lectures, and like basically that was like all the time that I spent devoted to that class during the day. Like I watched the lecture, did the notes, and that was it. Like obviously they had like practice problems and like optional readings. However, like since they weren't graded, I didn't really feel obligated to do that. Maybe that was a mistake on my part, but I learned from that my first quarter, because during winter and spring quarters I definitely learned from fall, because yeah, let's leave it at that. In summary, college is a lot more of independent work and you having to put in extra time outside of class in order to be prepared for material and exams and stuff like that. But that is something I did not realize until after my first quarter. Alright, so another thing that I learned was that optional things in college are basically things you should do. So like I mentioned before, like some of my classes had optional readings and optional practice problems, but like if you don't do them, you're basically gonna be lost in class. Because for example, you lecture 50 minutes Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 3 different classes. Like that is definitely not enough time in order to be able to absorb, learn, and like regurgitate all that information. Like in high school you have like assigned readings or whatever, but like it's super easy to like skate by and not do them. But like in college, if you don't do the readings, because the readings correspond to what they're talking about in lecture, and that basically bridges the gap of the knowledge, just because in lecture they go pretty brief and then basically they expect you to read the textbook to get like the full picture and understanding of whatever content they're lecturing about. So like if you don't read the textbook, you won't understand what's happening in the lecture, and like vice versa. Like if you don't go to lecture but you read the textbook, you're gonna have way too much information because the lecture highlights the important things, but you just need to like get the best of both worlds and use both of those resources and all the other resources your professors provide you with in order to be successful in a class. Alrighty, next up is something that I know a lot of people here on YouTube stress in their videos, is that office hours are important and you should be going to them. And that is something I definitely overlooked, especially with being online and not being the most extroverted person there is. Just like being able to like put yourself in a breakout room or a Zoom call with like a professor and just like starting up a conversation with them about like the material, like it's definitely really intimidating. But I guess like once you start doing it, it definitely gets a lot easier. But like I also imagine that like students who like are really informed about the topic would most likely be going to those office hours in order to like, talk more in depth about certain things. But that's also true, like students who have a great understanding of whatever content that they're learning about will go to office hours and talk to professors to get like more in-depth questions answered. But like there's also a bunch of students that are like kind of going for what office hours are like meant for, like getting help with the material. Like if you don't understand how to do something, like going to those office hours are super helpful. It's really great to get connections with professors and faculty, because in college connections are literally everything. Like they're super important. So it's better to start earlier, to start networking. For example, like from a professor's point of view, if you had a student that was going to office hours like regularly and always showing up and like putting in effort, as opposed to like a student that didn't show up to any office hours, and they were both at like an 89.99, like the student that goes to the office hours is more likely to get a grade bump, as opposed to the student that they like don't really know and never have seen in any office hours. Definitely take that with a grain of salt, because I know all professors are different, but I think it's definitely great to get connections with professors and faculty just so you're able to start building your network, because like I mentioned, networking in college is super important. Also during office hours, sometimes professors give out like exam tips and stuff like that, that they normally wouldn't have time to say in during lectures. So like I know for one of my professors during the office hours, he basically like told us like the structure of the exam and like questions and like make sure to like know certain topics. So it's definitely great to go to office hours, just so you can be like super ahead in a class. So imagine Black Friday. So basically like people are lined up like waiting to get into these stores in order to get like the best deals, and then like at a certain time they like open the doors and everyone floods in and tries to get as much as they can. That's essentially what enrollment is in college, at least at UCI, since we are a public university. So basically, enrollment windows are open from like people with the highest standing to lowest standing. So basically like people in the honors college, athletes, and stuff like that have priority enrollment. And then after that, it's gonna go like senior standing, junior standing, sophomore standing, and freshman standing. So like the more units you have, like the higher classification you have. So you basically get to enroll earlier. So coming into college, I had sophomore standing because I had a lot of AP and like dual enrollment credits transfer over for classes. So that was really beneficial because I was able to sign up for classes a little bit earlier than people my age. And enrollment windows are like every 15-minute increments. So basically like every 15 minutes, like more and more people are able to enroll for their classes. So like set alarms, don't miss your enrollment windows, because if you miss it by like even a minute or like a couple seconds, you could miss out on a class that was like almost already full and you're gonna have to like join the wait list. On the topic of enrollment windows, make sure you have like the course codes and like copy and paste them when you are enrolling for classes, and having backup schedules and backup classes and backups for those backups, and just like having a good amount of backups, because you never know what classes are gonna be filled up. Especially when there's general education requirements, because everyone has to take those. So those classes tend to fill up a lot faster, and then some classes are also major restricted. So you just need to make sure you're doing a lot of research and planning beforehand, because once it comes down to your enrollment window, you just want to be able to copy and paste those codes instead of having to look through the entire course catalog to find a class that satisfies a GE, or like what class times conflict with other class times and discussion times. So do a lot of planning beforehand, and then you'll be set during your enrollment window. Also, another thing that I learned, like I mentioned on the topic of networking and making connections and stuff like that, make friends with upperclassmen who have taken the same classes that you're planning to take, or who's the same major as you, or stuff like that. Because students who have gone through those classes and been through those experiences are a lot more knowledgeable of what it's really like, as opposed to like a faculty member like advising you on classes. Like, of course that information is really helpful, but it's also really insightful and eye-opening to see or hear like from students who have been through what you're going to be going through. Also, Rate My Professor, like yes, Rate My Professor is a great website and a great tool you should be using. Definitely take those reviews and everything that is written on there with a grain of salt, because you don't know how like salty people are at professors at the end of the quarter, like writing the bad reviews because they didn't get that grade bump or whatever. So it's really important to make sure you're getting like information about classes and professors from a variety of different sources. I know here at UCI we have like just a bunch of different resources that like students are able to like write reviews about classes and professors. I think like the most useful resource when it comes to like classes and professors are definitely upperclassmen, just because like I mentioned, they have gone through those things that you are going to be going through. So it's really cool to like hear about like their experiences with classes and professors and stuff like that. So like off the top of my head, one of the last things that I remember is that like college is gonna be what you make it. I know a lot of people have that segment around like certain schools saying like, oh, they're party schools, or like, oh, like they have a really bad social life. But like, if you really put yourself out there and like sign up for things, you're gonna have a social life. Like I know a lot of people say like UCI is like a pretty dead school or whatever, but like in my opinion, like if you put yourself out there and join things, you'll have a social life. So like if you're not willing to put in the effort, you're not gonna have a social life and you're not gonna have any friends. I know that could be a little bit difficult, especially with being online. That was something I was really like nervous about, like making friends and like joining orgs online, just because it's pretty hard to like have like a real connection with people like over a Zoom call. It's super cliche to say, but like it's 100% true. Like college is gonna be what you make out of it. So like if you aren't putting in the effort to make friends or have a social life, you're not gonna have one. Coming from me, like a more introverted person, like even though at first it was really hard to like open up to people and like join orgs and like put myself out there and apply to things, like once I was able to apply to those things and like find groups that like had things I was really interested in, I thought it was a lot easier to like make those personal connections and make friends and have more of like a social life and stuff like that. So definitely make sure like you're putting yourself out there, because if you don't, then you won't have any friends. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, that sounds really harsh, but like, it's true. Like, my first quarter, I wasn't really involved in any clubs or orgs on campus. It was pretty isolating, especially being at home, like just doing classes and like doing homework all alone, like not having like anyone to talk to or like get help with things. But as the year progressed, I joined more orgs, and through them, I was able to find friends and have like a social life and kind of just meet a bunch of new people. As we say it at UCI, zoot your zot and join orgs. Alrighty, so those are just a few of the things that I learned during my first year of college. Also, disclaimer, these are all from personal experience, so take all of these with a grain of salt, because every university, every student, everyone is different. So My experiences might not be the same from other people's experiences. My advice might be different from other people's advice. This is all just from personal experience. But I just wanted to let you all know and share basically what I went through during my first year of college, being online and all that good stuff. Also, if you are going to UCI or have any questions, please feel free to leave those questions down in the comments below, because I am trying to be a campus rep, so it'd be a great practice for me to answer those questions. And I want to thank y'all for watching this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!